More information is now public from special counsel Jack Smith's revised indictment of former President Trump. Smith is trying to keep the case alive after the Supreme Court ruled that Trump's official acts are immune to prosecution. Joining us now live to discuss the new evidence in Smith's case is former federal prosecutor Neama Rahmani. Neama, great to have you back.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
Neama, let's talk about the timing of this. Trump tried to delay this filing until after the election. His team argued that the judge should wait to release both Smith and Trump's filings at the same time. As a former federal prosecutor, is it routine to make filings like this available to the public when the case is still ongoing? And more importantly, could it have waited until after the election?
Steve, it is routine, and judges aren't supposed to make decisions for political reasons. And Judge Tanya Chutkan in D.C. said that were she to delay the unsealing of these appendices, that may be political in and of itself. So obviously, this case has taken a very long time. Some of it is Jack Smith's own doing. He took a long time to file it. And of course, Trump's lawyers have done an excellent job delaying the case on procedural grounds. They've scored some big wins in the appellate courts, particularly the Supreme Court. And of course, now Smith is trying to argue that all this conduct is personal and not official, because of course, the latter is subject to presidential immunity.
Now, Jack Smith filed this new indictment as a way to sort of circumvent the Supreme Court's immunity ruling. From what you've seen, do you think he's able, he'll ultimately be able to get around the Supreme Court on this?
I do think he has enough to get to a jury. He has a favorable judge in Judge Chutkan. She's certainly she's not like the judges in South Florida, for instance, who have ruled in Trump's favor and dismissed the case. This is someone that has been relatively on his side. So the question is, of course, does Trump win in November, in which case the case has to be dismissed? I mean, it's well established that a sitting president can't be prosecuted. But if Kamala Harris wins, the question is, has Smith alleged enough personal acts to get to a jury, to get past that motion to dismiss, to get past the Supreme Court? That's why you see this new superseding indictment. It doesn't talk about the Department of Justice. That's all official. It even names Mike Pence as Trump's running mate, not the vice president, not the president of the Senate. And it discusses communications with family members, personal lawyers. So I do think there's enough there to get past that motion to dismiss and get it to the next phase.
Now, based on all of what you've seen, what has been made public, what would you say is Jack Smith's strongest point? And to that end, what is Trump's best defense?
Well, Trump's best defense has always and will always be political, to win the election. And then short of that, to get the case dismissed in the United States Supreme Court, because he has a favorable 6-3 majority there. Short of that, to defend the case at trial, I think Trump, if it gets that far, Trump will have to argue that he genuinely, even if it was unreasonable, he genuinely believed that this election was stolen, and he was exercising his rights as commander-in-chief to audit the results and investigate election fraud. That, of course, would arguably be official and wouldn't be subject to prosecution because of the Supreme Court's decision. And of course, it's very hard to get a 12-0 guilty verdict in what would likely be the most politically charged prosecution in American history. Jack Smith would really have to thread the needle here, overcome many legal and procedural hurdles, the first being the election, then the Supreme Court, then the motion to dismiss, which will inevitably be filed, and of course, ultimately to a jury. So if I were a betting man, notwithstanding the merits of the case, I think Trump has many paths to victory here.
Neama, just briefly to your first point that you made there, is it fair to say that if Trump gets reelected, the case gets tossed out?
Absolutely. It's well established under the Department of Justice's longstanding policy. And there's memoranda in the Office of Legal Counsel that the sitting president can't be prosecuted. So both in D.C. and in Georgia and Fulton County, even though it's a state case, that logic would apply. The cases would have to be dismissed. And of course, Trump could even, appoint an attorney general who would fire Jack Smith, but that wouldn't even be necessary. It's pretty well established that if Trump wins in November, these prosecutions will all be dismissed.
Former federal prosecutor Neama Rahmani, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Steve.